welcome Dr. Brenda Green, our fearless leader, colleague, mentor, who is going to um, present the Symposium Awards for this year. Welcome, Dr. Green.
Thank you, Professor Hill, and thank you for your marvelous moderating this afternoon and this morning. Greetings again to everyone. This has been a glorious day. I think we had exciting roundtables, the dramatic readings, the scholarly presentations, the keynote. All of our panelists were outstanding, and you, our audience, asked really informative questions that really helped us to take deep dives into the work and the lives of Paul Marshall and John A. Williams. This is a highlight of our program, and this is where we honor and celebrate two incredible writers by having an award presented to them. And as was said earlier, we ensure the place of Black writers in the literary canon by saying their names, by including them in the curriculum of our colleges and schools, by celebrating them at symposia, forums, and conferences such as this. The theme, They Cried I Am, has brought the work and life of Paul Marshall and John Williams alive and given them a stronger voice. Their voices have to continue to be heard and situated more concretely in our American literary canon. And our nation, more than ever, needs to be informed about the significant contributions of their work. Their themes are resonating now, and I think, unfortunately, and to our, unfortunately, both, and fortunately, they will resonate today. So I'm going to begin then with the family of John A. Williams. We are pleased that Adam Williams is going to accept an award on behalf of his father, John Williams. And so I'm going to show you the award, and then we'll have remarks from Adam, pre-recorded remarks from Adam Williams. I'm very pleased to present the Richard Wright Award to John A. Williams in recognition of his outstanding contributions to creating literature reflecting the racial, social, and political landscape of America. And I'm also pleased okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to show the award again, just to make sure we have the correct award. This is the award, the Richard Wright Award for John A. Williams. And again, this is presented in recognition of his outstanding contributions to creating literature reflecting the racial, social, and political landscape of America. And we also have a proclamation from Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and I will read part of the proclamation. The proclamation reads, whereas it is a time honored Brooklyn tradition to honor these individuals and organizations who have dedicated their lives to promoting an appreciation for the written word, thereby enhancing the reading pleasure and access to information of the public at large. Whereas all of Brooklyn joins today with the Center for Black Literature at Medgar Evers College as they celebrate and honor the lives and works of legendary writer John A. Williams at the 2021 National Black Writers Biennial Symposium titled They Cried I Am and the John A. Williams Unsung Black Literary Voices. And whereas on behalf of all Brooklynites, I salute John Alfred Williams, and it goes on to say where he is born. So what I would like to close with, now therefore, I, Eric R. L. Adams, President of the Borough of Brooklyn, do hereby proclaim Saturday, March 27, 2021, as John A. Williams 2021 National Black Writers Conference Day in Brooklyn, New York, USA. Signed, Eric Adams, President of the Borough of Brooklyn. So we would now hear from Adam Williams, the son of John Williams.
I'd like to thank the Symposium for this distinguished award. Those of you who knew John, you are probably aware that at times he was leery of such distinctions, but I can assure you he would have been pleased with this honor and would have accepted graciously. His prolific and eclectic body of work has been well documented, but it should be noted that the arc of his writing came full circle with his return to poetry toward the end of his life. It was this medium that he used when he first put pen to paper in the Navy to express his feelings and emotions about dealing with racism in the service. It could be said that this was the initial spark that lit the fire. He always felt fortunate to have readers who understood what he was trying to express in his writing. And in a 1989 interview, he said, "Basically, I write because I feel I must. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to guide, advise, support, warn, and perhaps even threaten. A lot of those things may appear in the work. None of those, I believe, stem from negative impulses. If I have a particular knowledge of the world that I think may be important to other people, I would use it and hope that that knowledge will be of some value to them. I think that's part of my function too as a writer, to teach whenever I can." He brought this same mindset into the classroom where he encouraged young writers to find their voices while telling their own truths. When often asked about being labeled as angry, he felt that his honesty about racism and discrimination, particularly in the world of publishing, was often misconstrued or transposed to anger by those on the receiving end of these criticisms or by those who reviewed his work, sometimes for the aim of creating a particular narrative. He fully understood this was part of the world he lived in as a Black writer, though. While much of his writing may have touched upon similar themes, he was always striving to find new ways to capture a certain sensitivity and insight with regards to what his characters meant and did, as well as working with form and time to create compelling new narratives. He was acutely aware of the constraints that accompanied the label of Black writer and its presupposition that there were certain things that were not to be written about and things that you were not allowed to write about. In addition, there were conditions you had to accept, albeit begrudgingly, when it came to publishing advances, smaller printings, and the like. All of that aside, in his mind, the Black author is one of extreme value to society for the unique perspective and expression that he or she brings to the world of literature, or certainly a point of view that most white writers could not convey. Were he here to accept this award, it's hard to imagine he wouldn't make mention of the current state of race relations in the country. From the recent actions of the police in Rochester, to the deaths of Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, Philando Castile, Stephon Clark, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, just to name a few. He felt that it was our challenge to face and master the problems with race and racism, and that we had not yet done that. He spoke those words nearly 30 years ago, and given our current situation, they could have been spoken yesterday. One obvious way to counter this, in his opinion, was to teach history well and properly, and that as human beings, regardless of the culture, everyone encounters the same things to differing degrees. He surmised that history taught without informing people of that principle was important to some people for some reason, and that unless we came to grips with that reason, we were going to be in trouble. John's writing strove to correct some of history's omissions and falsehoods by weaving and encapsulating the truth into accounts and stories that were more palatable to the world at large. Perhaps one of his greatest strengths as a writer was that he always, even after publication, found things that he felt he should or could have done better, thus forcing him to raise the bar for the next piece of work. If if one were to browse his personal library, they would be astounded by the diversity and range of the subject matter. History books covering nearly every time period and place, books on anthropology, archaeology, astronomy, political science, race, theology, biographies and autobiographies, fiction, and an assortment on ancient civilizations, strange phenomena, and UFOs. All of this informed who he was as a person and certainly as a writer. There was almost no subject that didn't pique his interest. His life and his creative expression were intertwined, much like the jazz musicians and painters he admired. Like them, his art came from a place of truth, passion, beauty, and anger. Of poetry, Salman Rushdie wrote, "A poet's work, to name the unnameable, to point at frauds, to take sides, start arguments, shape the world, and stop it from going to sleep." These very points wove a thread through everything John did, from his early poetry to the journalism that gave him the foundation for seeking out answers and truths, to the numerous novels that combine creative storytelling with pointed messages about who and what we are as a society. It is therefore fitting that at the end of his life, he returned to his first love, poetry, the idiom that allowed him to be brief, buoyant, and brilliant. Again, on behalf of the whole Williams family, we proudly accept this award on his behalf.
I think your microphone is off.
But you missed everything I said.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I was thanking Adams for that powerful message and for giving us additional insight into John A. Williams, insight that we did not have before because we did not really talk about his poetry. So you gave us some powerful messages and added more in-depth discussion or insight to John A. Williams. And so now I am pleased that Evan Marshall. Evan Marshall, I'm so sorry that we are not in person because I would ask you to hold this plaque that we are awarding to your mother, Paul Marshall, but I hold it up so you can see it. Okay. And this is the Toni Morrison Award. And the Toni Morrison Award is presented to Paul Marshall in recognition of her outstanding contributions in literature representing the Caribbean American experience. 2001 National Black Writers Biennial Symposium, Center for Black Literature, Medgar Evers College, CUNY, March 27th, 2021. And you will notice we said Caribbean and American, as she insisted she was both.
Absolutely.
Yes, and before you speak, we also have a proclamation from Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. And I just will read a portion of that. Whereas it is a time-honored Brooklyn tradition to honor those individuals and organizations who have dedicated their lives to promoting an appreciation for the written word, thereby enhancing the reading pleasure and access to information to the public at large. Whereas all Brooklyn joins with the Center for Black Literature at Medgar Evers College, CUNY, as they celebrate and honor the life and work of legendary writer Paul Marshall at 2021 National Black Writers Biennial Symposium, Brown Girl Brownstones, The Chosen Place, The Timeless People, Praise Song for the Widow, The Life and Work of Paul Marshall, and Unsung Black Literary Voices. And whereas on behalf of all Brooklynites, I salute the memory and literary legacy of Paul Marshall, an American writer best known for her 1959 debut novel, Brown Girl Brownstones, whose life of literature has reached many and will live on in our memories of her deeds and spirit of excellence, who transitioned on August 12, 2019 at age 90. I applaud her for playing an indispensable role in the shaping of the 20th and 21st century African-American and African diasporic literary canons, and in making Black women, Women's History Month, central to those traditions. And there's more here, but I'm going to just add, now therefore I, Eric L. Adams, President of the Borough of Brooklyn, do hereby posthumously proclaim Saturday, March 27, 2021, as Paul Marshall 2021 National Black Writers Conference Day in Brooklyn, New York. And it's signed by Eric L. Adams, President of the Borough of Brooklyn. And so you will receive these awards. We'll find out where to send them to you. So thank you. And now we will like to hear from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This is such an honor to accept this award on behalf of my mother. And she is actually not far away from me right now. She physically is looking over my shoulders, and that will be something that I will maintain for the foreseeable future, because I find it very comforting and strengthening. This is something that, of course, is so much appreciated in terms of recognizing my mother, recognizing her achievements, recognizing what she brought to this world intellectually and in terms of her work. And so what I just would like to kind of talk about and recount a little bit is the experience I'm starting to have now with my mother's passing, and an effort being made by a colleague, Mary Helen Washington, to actually write my mother's biography, because the research that's being done and the archival information we're discovering is also providing me with a discovery of my mother in a whole nother dimension. I was, of course, aware for all of my life of how powerful a writer she was and how powerful an intellectual she was, but now I'm starting to discover how she reached that point in her life and that journey, that remarkable journey. And one of the things that's one of the most fascinating things I'm discovering is that how this little girl, who was quite smart, but was so determined in the face even of a family who weren't necessarily pushing for this little girl to go off and achieve great things, to be achieve, in terms of her early and the intellect she showed at school at an early age. It was not something that her family was encouraging her mother nor her father before my grandfather left the family. So it has been just a remarkable discovery for me how determined she was just to pursue things that she was curious about. And of course, later in my life, I could just see how that was a sustaining aspect of her life, just that intellectual curiosity and the belief that she was entitled, as with any other human being, to explore what each of us needs to explore, to grow, to prosper, to fulfill, these deep drives of becoming who we ultimately can become. So in discovering so much about my mother, I'm just becoming so inspired by how driven she was to achieve what she eventually achieved in her life. It was a single-mindedness that just carried her through so many life experiences that affected her personal life in so many ways. But ultimately, I was always just proud when I reflected on how she began her experience, and later in her life, how that brought her to the point where she is one of the greatest writers for me of all times, not in a category, not speaking or writing about a certain aspect of culture, but just intellectually, in terms of how she crafted her stories, how she crafted her characters, how she descriptively described scenes. To me, there was such a towering intellect and ability to craft words and to craft stories that I think is second to none. And for me, what was always so evident about my mother, and I hope I have the same approach creatively, is that she would never allow anything to compromise the story that had to be told, whether that might upset some people or it might delve into areas that were very complicated and potentially upsetting. She let nothing hold back what she felt the story, how it had to be told, what it had to deal with, the subject matter, the complex human interactions. Was, I think, as a teenager, sometimes uncomfortable when I started to read her work because it was so direct and sometimes so hitting. It took me a long time before I could speak with my mother about, what she was writing about, because some of the characters seemed quite close to home, and I would ask, "Is this so and so?" And she would say, "No, no, of course not. This is not so and so. This is a character I've created." But she was able just to take the positives and the negatives and the complexity of all of us, of humanity, and write about it in such a way it was just so real on the page, and for me so moving, and of course for so many other people. We have just discovered, Mary Helen sent me a recording of a seminar my mother did in the early 1960s, I think it was 63. Interestingly, in the audience was, as she describes it in some notes, her friend Malcolm X, who was looking up at her encouragingly. But what we've heard on this tape is my mother speaking in such an authoritative and in such a way about race relations as they were at the time in America, with such a sense of urgency and action. And the amazing thing is that what she was describing in terms of a struggle we had to undertake is so relevant even now. And we are confronted with some issues, some conflicts at the moment that we need the strength, we need the determination, we need the forthrightness of what my mother and many others were struggling with in the early 60s and throughout the 60s, because I think my mother right now would look at the situation in America, and she was very fortunate. She, like so many older African Americans, got to see the first African American president elected to the United States. And my mother was very much supportive of Obama, the Obama presidency. And in fact, I still have some of the Christmas cards she was getting from the family every year. We have them here in the house. But I think she began to lose some of her faculties when Trump became president. And I remember sitting down with her watching TV at her the home where she was living after she had to leave her apartment. And I said, "Mom, this man here, Donald Trump, you remember him from New York?" She was kind of like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, he's president now." And she's like, "No, he's not president." I said, "Yeah, you're right. He's not president." And that was, in some respects, for me, a relief, because of the struggle that she had sort of seen culminating with Barack Obama becoming president, is how I kind of was glad she was remembering part of her contribution, the contribution of so many people. But in some respects, it's come full circle again, where the voices and the struggle that she represented are needed once again. What she's had to do, what any of the titans from that period has had to do, is hand the football over, to us and to others to carry on and to learn from what was needed to address some of the same conflicts we are facing now. They might be somewhat sugar-coated or disguised differently, but they are as stark as much of an affliction on our attempts to become recognized as equal partners, equal to the spoils of the nation like America, and of course Britain, because I'm here in Britain, and Britain preceded in many respects what America grabbed culturally, from Africa, from other parts of the world. So it is something that it is really, for me, such a, so pleasing to see my mother continue to be honored, her work continue to be appreciated, because I think it needs to continue to be part of understanding the struggle that African Americans and African Americans from the Caribbean experience or from the American experience, and also, our whole community and the whole diaspora, have to continue to be inspired by these titans. So, I want to just express my gratitude and to say on behalf of my mother's family and the family that's still, alive, how appreciative we are that this little girl, this determined little girl who achieved so much is still being recognized and appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Evan. It's really strange to hear you talk about your mother as a little girl, but you're sharing the impact she had on you and on the larger world. So we really, really appreciate that, and really thank you for being here and for ensuring that her legendary voice and work is heard by having that biography, working with Mary Helen Washington.
As we're coming to yet another milestone in our evening, we are beginning our musical tribute to our honored writers this evening, and that is going to be done by seasoned Elegance, led by Tulivu-Donna Cumberbatch, who is a native of Brooklyn, New York, of course. She's a daughter of the great baritone saxophonist Harold Cumberbatch. Her name, he named her Donna Lynn after Miles Davis' composition, Donna Lee. Tulivu is a name taken from Tanzania, which translates to peaceful, tranquil, and serene. She has worked extensively with trumpeter Hannibal Lacumbe, formerly Hannibal Peterson, as the featured vocalist, and has performed two of his symphonies, Children of Fire and Flames of South Africa. She currently works with her own trio, Seasoned Elegance, which we will hear from tonight, and the Harlem Renaissance Orchestra. Ms. Cumberbatch has won numerous awards for her outstanding performances in the entertainment field, including awards from the New York City Parks and Recreations Department, the Fresh Fruit Festival, and the Central Brooklyn Jazz Consortium. The new recording, Peace, Love, and Blessings, is a single co-written and produced with musician Elliot Barron. Please put our virtual hands together for Seasoned Elegance and Tulivu Cumberbatch.
Peace and love. Peace and love and blessings, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to pay tribute to Paul Marshall, this first tune. It's Stella by Starlight. And Stella, well, before I do that, Paul Marshall's family were Barbadian immigrants, as were mine, as my grandparents were as well. And Stella is a very popular name in Barbados. So that's one of the reasons why I chose Stella by Starlight. She wrote an article in the New York Times talking about how she grew up in a brownstone in Brooklyn, and that she used to love to her and her sister used to love to sneak in and hear her mother talking with her friends. And she said they had such a beautiful language and such a beautiful command of the English language and words. So she called them the poets in the kitchen. And this is part of what she wrote in the New York Times. My glasses. Oh. She wrote, "What I had been hearing in the kitchen of that brownstone house when my mother and her friends came together to have their little coffee clatch was a kind of poetry in their West Indian dialect, the language that they had managed to mold out of what was imposed on them." Stella by Starlight. Oh, great symphonic theme, that's Stella by Starlight. And my love.
murmur at eventide, and ripples like a nook where two lovers are the light. She's everything and more. She's everything that you adore. She's everything that you adore. She's everything that you Stella, I have to admit, I was really not aware of John A. Williams' work. I just started reading one of his books, and but I'm going to dedicate this Thelonious Monk to him, and I'm going to remedy that situation. I'm going to start reading more of his work. We're going to do Blue Monk by the great Thelonious Spare Monk. Going alone, life is your own, but the cost is sometimes dear. Being complete, knowing defeat, keeping on from year to year. It takes some doing, one can raise the blues you hear. From year to year, life is a school, less you're a fool, but the line that brings you pain, no bring it once, you're just a dunce, trial and error, loss and gain. It takes some doing. Conquering so slow, slow train, finding your own place in the sun. Doesn't come the easy way. Surely, nothing is cheap. Measured by the dues you pay. It takes some doing. But there is a good hard way, measured by the dues you pay. Life is a school, less you're a fool, but the honey brings you pain. Oh, and at once, you're just a dunce, trial and error, loss and gain. It takes some doing, conquerors are slow. Slow train, finding your very simple son. It doesn't come the easy way. Shallow and deep, nothing is cheap. Measure by the dues you pay. It takes some doing. Mercury's on blue, concrete. Measure by the dues you pay. Yeah. All right. That was from Mr. John A. Williams.
Man who cried I am.
Yes. Man who cried I am. This one is a Duke Ellington classic. And when I read this book, Praise Song for the Real, there was a section in this book that I thought would fit perfectly with Duke Ellington's In a Sentimental Mood. So I'm just going to read that passage from the book. The character in the book who represents the wife is reminiscing about how her and her husband used to spend those Friday nights romancing and dancing in their living room. So this is a passage from that book. That's the second page. Okay. What's your pleasure this evening, Miss Williams? Calling her by her maiden name. Will it be the Savoy, the Rockland Palace, or the Rennie again? Oh, I don't know, she would say, entering the fantasy with him. Why don't we go on over to the Audubon for a change? I hear there's a dance there tonight. I'm kind of tired of those other places. And afterwards, if we're hungry, we can go back cross town for chicken and waffles at Wells. Your wish, ma'am, is my command. In minutes, he would have the records stacked high on the turntable spindle, and the three-way lamp in the room turned to low. Back at her side, he would offer her his arm, and with his other hand clearing a way for them through the imaginary crowd in the make-believe ballroom, he would lead her out to the center of the floor. In a sentimental mood, I can see the stars come through my room, while your loving attitude is like a flame that lights the gloom so sweet in this sentimental bliss. You make my paradise complete. Rose petals seem to fall. It's all like a dream to call you mine. My heart's alive to think since you made this night a thing goodbye. Sentimental mood. I'm within a world so heavenly, and I never dreamt that you'd be loving sentimental me. Those fanciful nights out on the town always ended with Avery Parrish's recording, After Hours. This they played over and over again. Jay's arms around her waist, hers circling his neck, their bodies fused and swayed. They would slow dance in the dimly lit room to the sound of Parrish's unabashedly sensual, crystalline musings on the piano. You know something, old lady? You still feel like me, whispering it in her ear. Rose petals seem to fall. It's so like a dream to call you mine. My heart's a lighter thing since you made this night feel goodbye. In a sentimental mood, I'm within a world so heavenly, and I never dreamt that you'd be loving Praise song for the widows, where that passage came from. And we're going to do one more tribute to Paul. Her memoir is called Triangular Road. And I'm going to read a passage where she talks about how she went to Festac in Africa and visited several countries. And she wrote this passage. I experienced something similar when I went to Ghana, which I'll mention in a minute. She says, we often found ourselves the object of heated debates, among them as to our possible lineage, singling out cheekbones, foreheads, shape of our eyes, our heads, the size and design of our lips, the particular spread and flare to our nostrils, our jawlines. Examining all this, they would declare to us to be variously Yoruba, Fanti, Igbo, Akan, Igbo, Fulani, Temne, Luo. To be claimed by so many and to be claimed by so many, to possess a face that was generic, to possess an entire continent below, apparently, compared to people in the entire continent below the Sahara. I too, when I went to Ghana, was pulled aside by an elder who said that I was definitely from the Ashanti. So we're going to dedicate this to the beautiful ladies in the house, being that it is Women's History Month, and it's called Daughters of the Nile. When I wrote the song, I gave it to my son, and he put a rap to it. I asked him to write a rap version of it. And so he handed me this, and I was just floored. In 15 minutes, he had it written down. So this is the rap version of Daughters of the Nile first, and then we'll go into the song. Beautiful Nubian sisters, quite jazzy, daughters of the Nile, did I tell you that you have the glistening of the sunset I'm picturing, visioning silky threads, twist braids and dress. Yes, my daughters of the Nile can heal the world with their smile. I used your love as a blanket of warmth as a child. Finest fashions, styles only God can imagine, and the love that you create, only ignorant players hate. Only God can judge me. Still, you want everyone to love me. When others want to slug me, all you want to do is hug me. See me feeling down, you want to cheer me up and bug me. I can swing you dark and lovely. There's no such thing as ugly. Since adolescence, you taught me so many lessons that just your presence brings blessings. To feel your essence, I'd walk 1,000,000 miles. Peace and love to my daughters of the Nile. Of the Nile, I sing a song for you, for you, for you, for you, for you. Daughters of the Nile, walk with graceful strides. In the heart of Africa, our souls abide. Our crowning glory, gleaming in the sun. Cornrows, twists, and locks, the natural crown. Great grandmothers bring wisdom of old. Mothers, daughters, sisters in the fold. Aunts and grandmothers, natural flow. God and Mother, guide us, lesson born. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Daughters of the Nile, daughters of the Nile, daughters of the Nile. Oh. his wine. Hands akimbo, graceful and sublime. Cinnamon, cocoa, ginger, usually sweet. Gracefully adorned with bangles, rings, and beads. Spiritual healers, the essence of style. Call people from caramel, queen of the Nile. Ebony moon, I walk with humble pride. Know that in your heart, the Holy Spirit guides. Daughters of the Nile. Daughters of the Nile. Daughters of the Nile. Sing this song for you. My daughter, sisters, Irish sisters, for you. Ancestral spirits, for you. Sojourner true. I sing for you. I sing for you. That concludes our portion of the program. Just let me introduce you to these wonderful musicians. On percussion, Mr. Choki Catlow. On bass, Brother Rashid Massar Sahu. And on piano, Mr. Anthony Wanzi. Give praise, thank you for inviting us. We wish you peace, love, blessings. And by the way, that's the name of my new single, Peace, Love, and Blessings. You can find it on all of the what do you call it, son? All of the platforms. You can see I'm not used to it, right? All of the usual usual suspect. For iTunes, Spotify, etc. TikTok. Okay, YouTube. So again, peace, love, and blessings to you all. Thank you for inviting me, Medgar Evers College, and have a safe journey.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Tulivu-Donna Cumberbatch and seasoned Elegance. If literature feeds the mind and music feeds the soul, we have been totally nourished today. I hope you all have enjoyed our program as much as we have enjoyed presenting it to you. And to close out our evening, I'd like to bring back Dr. Brenda Green.
Thank you, Professor Hill. This has been an historic day. This is the time when I am saddened that we can't meet in person. And I was watching Evan moving his head, and I felt like the whole audience was. I'm sure we all were doing it in the space of our home. You couldn't sit still with that music. So it's just such a wonderful way to end the program, and to show, as Professor Hill said, the connection between music and letters and art. As we come to a close, if we were in real space, I'd ask everyone to come to the stage, all the writers and the participants. So if you're still here and we can see you, the team and the writers who are still here, please show your face. Stop the video. We want to see you as we bring this to a close. Okay, so we have Clarence Reynolds, my right hand, I was going to say left hand, right hand, managing editor, the managing editor of Killens Review and the director of the Center for Black Literature. And of course, you see Evan Tulivu, if you can, I don't know if you can show your face. We have Michael Green, who's been part of our Re-envisioning Our Lives Through Literature program, actor, producer, been here since 2003. We started working together, I think. And we're not related. I have an E on the end of my name. Okay, and we have Donna Hill, as she said, she's been at Medgar Evers for so long. Tulivu-Donna Cumberbatch, this really brings back memories. And I hope you don't share that we were in high school together. We went to Erasmus, we both graduated from Erasmus Hall High School. We're not telling the age, the same year. So there's some people who were here throughout. They may not be able to get on, but I really want to thank you so much for sharing this day with us, for the invigorating discussions, for the dramatic readings, and for your questions, our attendees, for your questions. And when Donna Tulivu-Donna shared the story about going back to Ghana, it also brought back that memories, because I went to Ghana too. And guess what, Tulivu? They said I was part of Ashanti also. Say they look at you and they want to figure out, where are you from? They look at your face. Okay, so I also want to thank all of our team, our sponsors and supporters, our actors, Lisa, Jesse Peterson, I said Michael Green, our musical tribute, and the families, Evan, Marshall, thank you so much for being part of this program. Pleasure. You know, unfortunately, we didn't hear about the yacht, how you became head of this whole yacht. We can do that another time, but it's interesting. Family of John A. Williams for participating. I just have some highlights I shared. As you go through the closing survey, as I went through the program, there's just some highlights I want to point out. Literary canon squeeze people out. We have to bust open the canon. And that was said by Mary Helen Washington. In the 21st century, race does matter. We have to expand our knowledge about John Oliver Killens, John A. Williams, and Paul Marshall, and that was Ishmael Reed. They were really fine writers. Keith Gilliard reminded us that we have to buy Black books because we have to expand the readership. And it doesn't matter, even if you're not reading them, buy them. You will read them at some point. Carol Boyce Davies talked about Paul Marshall representing creative intellectualism. And as a writer, not constrained by the boundaries of the United States. And I think we can say that about both Paul Marshall and John Williams. Mary Emma Graham reminded us of the importance of reading the original work and how we have to go back and look at the letters between Black writers. You get so much. And I think about, I'm in a position, and I'm very grateful, where I can sometimes have conversations with some of the writers who've been around for decades, and I value that. And every time I talk to them, I get such gems. And I said, I should probably have a recording on when I'm talking to someone like a Sonia Sanchez or Hakeem Mahabudi or Eugene Redmond. They just have such rich stories, and there was such a community there. So we have to read the letters, and we have to document their stories. Larry Jackson reminded us how John Williams, in talking about the literature and African independence, he really gave us a lot of information about the independence movement and how this country reacted to African independence and the democratization of that in America. And I really was not aware, and I got this from Mary Helen Washington, of how much Paul Marshall was involved in what would be known as leftist politics. I just didn't know that side of her. So that was revealing to me. And again, going back to John Williams, when we look at how these writers represent what is happening today, there was a section I marked off in The Man Who Cried I Am around police brutality. And I said, this is something I could be reading today. So again, these writers have left a legacy, and their themes reverberate today. Again, remember to complete your evaluation forms. We really value your feedback. That helps us to plan for our next conference, which, by the way, is in 2022. And we already have the title, the theme, because we planned this, 2 years ahead. It's called The Beautiful Struggle, Black Writers Lighting the Way. So you can do a lot with that, right? We also encourage you to purchase the books of many of our participants who were here today, as well as the books of Paul Marshall and John Washington. You can purchase them online at the African American Literature Book Club, ALBC.com. It's also in the chat. I encourage you to come out for our next program next month, Thursday, April the 8th, in celebration of Poetry Month and the John Oliver Killens reading series. We will have a discussion with Talib Kweli. He will be discussing his new book and memoir, Vibrate Higher. And if you don't know, he's a renowned hip hop artist and activist. And his memoir is a collection of essays that illuminates his upbringing, his artistic success. He will be in conversation with Akiba Solomon, who's the senior editor of the Marshall Project. And that should be exciting. And just a little note I'd like to add, he's also my oldest son. Okay, so I'm not just saying that so you can come, but I'm very, very proud of him and of his work. And please consider donating to the Center for Black Literature, as was said earlier. No amount is too large or too small. The donate button is on the Center for Black Literature website, and your donations help to support and sustain all of our programs. So thank you so much. Be safe, be well, and this has been wonderful. I love it. I'm very inspired and very moved. This day has given me a lot to reflect on. So thank you.
you.